Mr. Frank, stay quiet. Don't let them know you're here. James Frank froze in his own doorway, his $3,000 suit still wrinkled from the emergency flight from Singapore. The maid, Elena, the one he'd hired 6 months ago, materialized from the shadows like a ghost, her eyes wild with an urgency that sent ice through his veins. What are you? Her hand clamped over his mouth. A billionaire, silence in his own home. For a man who clawed his way from sleeping in his car to building a tech empire worth $847 million, the indignity should have sparked rage. Instead, something in her terrified expression made him listen. Please, she breathed, barely audible. Trust me. Then he heard it. Voices, drifting from his living room at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night. James had left for Singapore 3 days ago. His wife Victoria knew. His brother Derek knew. The house should have been quiet, dark, empty. But those voices, he knew them. The defendant has shown clear signs of paranoid delusions. His brother's voice rang out with theatrical authority. Just last month, he accused me of trying to steal from him. Me, his own blood. James' heart stopped. What the hell is happening? Elena's grip on his arm tightened as she pulled him backward, away from the foyer, into the narrow servants' corridor he'd never even noticed before. The hidden arteries of his mansion, traveled by people he barely saw. Look, she whispered, positioning him at a crack in the wall panel. What James saw through that crack would replay in his nightmare for years. His living room, where he'd celebrated his daughter's birthdays, where he proposed to Victoria 15 years ago, had been transformed into a courtroom. His own furniture rearranged into a grotesque theater. A man in judge's robes sat in James' favorite leather chair. His brother Derek stood at a makeshift prosecutor's table, shuffling papers with the confidence of someone who'd rehearsed this. And Victoria, his wife, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, mascara running in practice streams. He's been getting worse, Victoria sobbed to the fake judge. Some nights, he doesn't even recognize me. He screams about conspiracies, about people stealing from him. I'm terrified of what he might do. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because this story gets darker than you can imagine, and I want to know who's brave enough to stick with me to the end. And also make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out our heartwarming stories. The air left James's lungs. 23 years he'd spent building his empire, sleeping 4 hours a night, missing his daughter's recitals, sacrificing everything. He'd started with nothing, literally nothing, just a laptop and a dream in a studio apartment in Newark. And now, his own family was staging a trial to take it all. Elena, James whispered, his voice cracking. What is this? She turned to him in that narrow corridor, and in the dim light, he saw something that terrified him more than the courtroom. Pity. Mr. Frank, she said softly, I need you to stay very quiet, because what you're about to witness is going to destroy you. But if you make a sound, if they know you're here, we'll never prove what they're really doing. Prove? You're not really a maid, are you? A ghost of a smile crossed her face. No, sir, I'm not. James looked back through the crack. A man he'd never seen, presumably a bribed witness, was now taking the stand, swearing on a Bible that James had threatened him with violence. Everything James had built, everything he was, it was being stolen in his own living room while the city slept. And he had to stay silent and watch it happen. How did it come to this? The fake witness adjusted his tie, nervous, rehearsed, and began his testimony. I'm Dr. Richard Pemberton, Mr. Frank S. personal physician for 3 years. James S. jaw clenched. I've never seen that man in my life, he hissed to Elena. I know, she whispered back. He's actually a disgraced psychiatrist from Connecticut. They paid him $75,000. $75,000. James had given his brother a kidney when Derek was 19. He'd paid for Victoria's mother's cancer treatment out of pocket when insurance denied the claims. And they'd assembled this theater, to rob him. The patient exhibits classic signs of paranoid personality disorder, the fake doctor continued, reading from papers that looked disturbingly official. Delusions of persecution, irrational distrust of family members, aggressive outbursts. Through the crack, James watched his business partner James Chen stand up. James, who'd been with him since the beginning. James, whose wedding James had paid for when James couldn't afford it. Your Honor, James said, his voice heavy with false regret, I've witnessed Mr. Frank as declined firsthand. Last board meeting, he accused me of embezzling. Me, after 15 years of loyalty. James paused for effect. We've had to hide this from shareholders, but the truth is, James Frank is no longer fit to run his own company. James's hands bowed into fists. Elena placed a steady hand on his shoulder. How long? James demanded in a harsh whisper. How long have you known? 8 months, Elena replied quietly. It started after you refused to take the company public in March. The memory hit him like a freight train. The board meeting. James and Derek pushing hard for an IPO. James refusing because going public meant losing control, meant answering to shareholders instead of his vision. The vote was 6-5 against the IPO. James had a deciding vote. He thought it was over. A business disagreement. He'd been so stupid. Your late mentor, Richard Walsh, Elena continued. His estate lawyer suspected something when Derek started making inquiries about competency proceedings. That's when they hired my firm. Your firm? I'm a licensed private investigator, Mr. Frank. Corporate fraud division. She adjusted something on her collar, a tiny camera lens, barely visible. I've been documenting everything. Every bribe, every meeting, every rehearsal of this nightmare. On the makeshift witness stand, Victoria was now testifying, her voice cracking with manufactured emotion. He accused our daughter of being in on some conspiracy. Our own child. She's studying abroad because she's scared to be near him. James felt something break inside his chest. Emma, his little girl, not so little anymore, 22, finishing her master's at Oxford. Also, he thought, is Emma really abroad? He asked Elena, terrified of the answer. Elena's pause was too long. Mr. Frank. A laptop screen flickered to life in the living room, and there was Emma, his daughter, appearing via video call. But something was wrong. Her eyes were red, her face puffy. She looked like she'd been crying for days. Hi, Dad. Emma's voice came through the speakers, hollow and broken. No, 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 no. Emma, sweetie, the fate judge said with rehearsed gentleness, I know this is difficult, but we need you to tell us about your father's behavior, for your own safety. Emma's lip trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears streamed down her face. He, his being. She couldn't finish the sentence. James couldn't breathe. His daughter, his baby girl, the one pure thing in his life. They threatened her, Elena whispered urgently. 2 weeks ago, they told her she didn't cooperate. They fabricated assault charges against her boyfriend. Plant drugs in his apartment. Destroy his life. Drop a like right now if your heart is racing. Because I promise you, this is about to get so much worse. Derek stood up, sensing Emma's hesitation. Your Honor, as you can see, even his own daughter is traumatized. I move that we. I can't do this, Emma suddenly sobbed on the screen. Uncle Derek, I can't. This is wrong. This is so wrong. The room went silent. Derek's face transformed from sympathetic uncle to something cold, something reptilian. Emma, we discussed this. Remember what's at stake. I don't care. Emma was full-on crying now. He's my dad. He never hurt anyone. You're lying about everything. Victoria jumped up. Emma, stop it right now. You told me he was sick. You said we were helping him. But this is... The screen went black. Someone cut the connection. James was shaking. Elena's grip on his arm was the only thing keeping him upright. They were going to fake her testimony, Elena said. Audio deepfake technology. They had a voice actor ready. In the living room, chaos erupted. Derek was shouting at someone on his phone. Victoria was screaming about Plan B. James looked like he might vomit. The fake judge banged his gavel. Order. We'll proceed without the daughter's testimony. We have sufficient evidence. Sufficient evidence? Derek spun around. We need airtight. He's supposed to be on a plane for 18 more hours. We have until dawn to make this legal before his lawyers can interfere. Until dawn. James checked his watch. 12:47 a.m. They had hours to finish stealing his life. I'm going in there, James growled. No. Elena's voice was steel. Not yet. I need one more thing on recording. The money. I need them to discuss the actual theft, how they'll liquidate the assets once they have conservatorship. I don't care about. Yes, you do. Elena turned him to face her fully. Because if you go in there now, they'll claim this was just an intervention gone wrong or some other legal maneuvering. But if we have them discussing the actual theft, the real crime, they go to prison. All of them. For a long time. James looked back through the crack. Derek was pouring himself a scotch. James, as 25-year Macallan, like he already owned it. How much longer? James asked through gritted teeth. Soon, Elena promised. They are rattled now. People make mistakes when they are rattled. They'll talk about the money. As if on cue, Victoria spoke up, her fake tears completely gone. Forget the girl. We stick to the plan. James, show them the transfer protocols. James pulled out a folder, hands shaking. Once we had a conservatorship approved by 6 a.m., we have a 72-hour window before it needs judicial review. In that window, we transfer 60% of company shares to the LLC Derek set up in Delaware. We force a sale. James S. lawyers will try to block it, but by the time they navigate the courts. We're offshore with $400 million, Derek finished, grinning. Each. There it was. The truth, finally spoken aloud. James felt something shift inside him. The hurt, the betrayal, the devastation. It crystallized into something else. Something cold. Something focused. He'd been the underdog before. The kid from Newark who everyone said would amount to nothing. He'd fought his way to the top once. He could do it again. Now, he asked Elena. She smiled and held up a phone. Now we've got them. Everything's recorded. The police are already en route. I texted them 5 minutes ago. But Mr. Frank. James, she corrected. You deserve to confront them first. You've earned that right. He looked at his reflection in a mirror hanging in the corridor. The billionaire, the self-made man, the fool who'd trusted the wrong people. No more. Let's end this. 2:47 a.m. The fake judge raised his gavel, the sound about to seal James' fate. Based on the overwhelming testimony presented tonight, I hereby declare James Frank mentally incompetent and grant emergency conservatorship to. James kicked the door open. The sound echoed like a gunshot through his living room. Every head snapped toward him. For a moment, one beautiful, crystalline moment, time stopped. Victoria's face went white. The champagne glass in Derek's hand slipped, shattering against the marble floor. James made a sound like a wounded animal. The fake judge's gavel hung suspended in midair, frozen in shock. Please, James said, his voice deadly calm as he stepped into the room. Elena right behind him with her phone raised. Don't stop on my account. I want to hear how this ends. Finish stealing my life. I'm curious about the ending. James. Derek found his voice first, already pivoting into lawyer mode. Thank God you're home. We were so worried about you. We organized this intervention. Intervention. James laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what we're calling identity theft and fraud now? An intervention. Victoria stood up, tried to approach him with arms outstretched. Baby, you don't understand. We're trying to help. Don't. The single word stopped her cold. Don't you dare come near me. The fake judge was already moving toward the side door, his robes rustling. James nodded to Elena, who pressed a phone screen. The sound of a deadbolt clicking shut echoed through the room, every exit simultaneously locking. Oh, I wouldn't run, Your Honor, James said. Or should I say, Gerald Hutchins, disbarred attorney from Pennsylvania with a gambling problem and $200,000 in debt to the Riverside Casino? Yeah, we know everything. Gerald froze, his face crumbling. James was hyperventilating. James, listen, I can explain. Explain what, James? Explain 15 years of friendship being worth $400 million. That's about $26 million per year. Honestly, I'm almost impressed by the math. You were never supposed to come home. Victoria screamed suddenly, her composure shattering like the champagne glass. Your flight was supposed to be 18 more hours. You ruined everything. There it was, the mask completely off. The woman he'd loved for 15 years, revealing the monster underneath. James felt something inside him die. And something else, something stronger, being born from its ashes. Elena, he said quietly, show them. Elena tapped her phone. The massive TV on the wall, the one where they watch movies as a family, where Emma used to watch cartoons, flickered to life. Security footage began playing. Derek meeting with Gerald Hutchins in a parking garage, handing over a briefcase. Victoria meeting with the fake witnesses at a hotel, counting out cash. James forging medical documents in James's own office, using James's own computer. 8 months of conspiracy, all documented, all time-stamped, all undeniable. Oh God, James whispered, sinking to his knees. Oh God, oh God. Derek's face transformed from shock to rage. You think this changes anything? We have lawyers. We have... The sound of sirens cut through his words. Blue and red lights began dancing through the windows. Car door slamming. Footsteps on the driveway. If you saw this coming, you're lying. Comment justice right now if you want to see how this ends. We. James stepped closer to his brother, close enough to see the fear blooming in Derek's eyes. You don't have anything, Derek. Not anymore. Those lawyers you mentioned, I called them 20 minutes ago. Informed them their clients were engaged in criminal conspiracy. They dropped you faster than you tried to drop me. Victoria lunged forward, not at James, but at Elena, her perfectly manicured nails aimed like weapons. You did this. You're just a maid, a nobody. James caught Victoria's wrist mid-strike. For a woman who just tried to steal $847 million, she felt surprisingly fragile in his grip. She's not a nobody, James said quietly. She's a person who saved me, which is more than I can say for my wife. The front door burst open. Detective Sarah Chen, James had donated to the Police Benevolent Fund for years. Ironic now, led a team of officers inside. James Frank, she said, all business. We received a report of attempted fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. That would be accurate, detective. James released Victoria's wrist, watching her crumple. This is your crime scene. What happened next was chaos choreographed by justice. Derek tried to run, got 3 steps before 2 officers tackled him. Gerald, the fake judge, was already crying, babbling about how he never wanted to do it, how they threatened him to. Lies, all lies, but entertaining ones. James just sat on the floor, broken, repeating, I'm sorry, like a mantra that might rewind time. But Victoria stood perfectly still as an officer approached with handcuffs, her eyes locked on James. I loved you, she said, and for the first time that night, James believed she might be telling the truth. Once, before the money, before you became this obsession with work, I loved the man you were. James met her gaze and felt nothing. The hurt, the betrayal, it was already hardening into scar tissue. The man I was, he said softly, the man I was slept in his car and ate ramen for dinner because he was saving every penny to build something. The man I was gave you everything, paid for your mother's treatment, bought you this house, made you a millionaire's wife. And the man I am is about to watch you go to prison. The officer cuffed her. She didn't resist, just kept staring at James like she was trying to memorize his face, or maybe seeing him clearly for the first time. You know what the really funny thing is? Victoria said as the officer led her toward the door. I actually did love you, even while planning all this. Isn't that insane? No, James replied. That's just sad. She was gone. They all were, loaded into police cars, their rights being read, their futures reduced to orange jumpsuits and trial dates. The mansion fell silent except for the crime scene technicians beginning their work, photographing the fake courtroom setup, bagging evidence. James stood in the center of his living room, not his anymore, not really, maybe never was, and felt the weight of the night crash over him. His legs gave out. He sank onto the couch, his $3,000 suit wrinkling further. and he didn't care. Elena sat down beside him, not too close, respectful of the trauma. "You okay?" she asked. James laughed, a broken, hollow sound. "I just watched my wife, my brother, and my best friend try to steal my entire life. I'm the furthest thing from okay." "But you're still standing," Elena said. "That counts for something." Detective Chen approached, tablet in hand. "Mr. Frank, I'll need a full statement, but that can wait until morning. What they attempted here tonight, this is serious. We're talking multiple felonies each. With the evidence Ms. Rivera gathered, they're looking at significant prison time." "Good," James said simply. Then, "My daughter, Emma, she was on video chat earlier. Is she?" "We have an officer with her in Oxford. She's safe. She actually called us herself about an hour ago, confessed everything they'd threatened her with. She's the one who confirmed the timeline." Chen's expression softened. "Your daughter loves you, Mr. Frank. She never wanted any part of this." Something in James' chest loosened. Not healed, not even close, but loosened enough to breathe. "Thank you, Detective." After Chen walked away, James turned to Elena, really looked at her for the first time. This woman who'd spent 6 months scrubbing his floors, making his meals, being invisible, all while wearing a wire and documenting the greatest betrayal of his life. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you really take this case?" Elena smiled, genuinely this time, no more pretense. "You gave my brother a scholarship 15 years ago. Jamie Rivera, kid from the Bronx, no money, no connections, just talent. Your company gave him an internship, mentored him, invested in him. He's a senior engineer at Google now, makes more money than he ever dreamed possible." James remembered Jamie, brilliant kid, hungry, reminded James of himself at that age. "You did this for your brother." "No," Elena said. "I did this because people like you, people who actually remember what it's like to have nothing, are rare and worth protecting, even when you can't protect yourself." Outside, dawn was beginning to break. Saturday, December 28th, the day his family had planned to complete their theft. Instead, it was the day James Frank got his life back, or what was left of it. Anyway, he stood up slowly, every muscle aching. Elena stood with him. "What happens now?" she asked. James looked around his living room, at the fake judge's chair, at the scattered champagne glass, at the evidence markers being placed by technicians. This house, this life, these relationships, all of it contaminated by betrayal. "Now," James said, "now I rebuild. Again." He'd done it before. From nothing to everything. He could do it again. From rubble to something new. And this time, he'd be smarter about who he let close. 48 hours later, James stood in his study, the room where he'd built his empire from scratch, working 3 jobs while coding through the night. Now it felt like a mausoleum. The arrest had made national news. Tech billionaire's family attempts to elaborate fraud screamed every headline. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investors, board members, reporters hungry for blood. He'd ignored them all. Instead, he sat staring at a single photograph on his desk. Emma's graduation from high school. She was smiling, braces gleaming, his arm around her shoulders. Victoria on the other side. Derek photobombing in the background. James had taken the picture. When did we become strangers pretending to be a family? A knock at the door. Elena entered with coffee. Real coffee this time, not the act of a maid serving her employer. She'd resigned from the investigation firm. Said this case had changed her, made her want something different. "Your daughter's on video call," Elena said gently. "She's been waiting for 20 minutes. James' heart clenched. He hadn't spoken to Emma since that night. Couldn't find the words. "I don't know what to say to her." "Start with hello," Elena suggested. "The rest will follow." Emma's face filled his laptop screen moments later. Her eyes were red-rimmed, puffy from days of crying. She looked so young, so broken. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." James felt his carefully constructed walls crumble. "You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart. They threatened you. They manipulated you. But I should have called you, should have warned you. I was just so scared they'd hurt Tyler, and Her voice broke completely. Emma, listen to me. James leaned closer to the screen, wishing he could hug her through the pixels. You were brave. Detective Chen told me you called the police yourself. You tried to stop them during the video call. You're the hero in this story, not the villain. I don't feel like a hero, Emma sobbed. I feel like I failed you. You didn't fail anyone. Your mother, your uncle, they failed us both. But we're still here. We're still standing. The conversation lasted 2 hours. Emma told him everything. How Derek had approached her 3 months ago with lies about James' deteriorating mental health. How Victoria had played the worried mother so convincingly. How they'd isolated Emma, fed her carefully crafted stories, made her genuinely believe James was sick. I'm coming home, Emma announced suddenly. Dropping out of Oxford. I need to be there. Need to help rebuild. Absolutely not, James said firmly. You finish your degree. You live your life. That's how you help me, by not letting their poison infect your future. But Dad... Emma, I clawed my way up from nothing once. I can do it again. But I need to know you're out there, building something beautiful. Something they can't touch. Can you do that for me? Emma wiped her tears, and James saw something shift in her expression. Determination. His daughter, finding her spine. Okay, she said, but I'm calling you every single day. Deal. After Emma disconnected, James found Elena standing at the window, looking out over the city lights. Your legal team called, she said. Derek, Victoria, and James are all cooperating now, turning on each other for reduced sentences. Derek's lawyers claiming it was all Victoria's idea. Victoria's lawyers blaming Derek. James is sobbing in every interrogation. Typical, James said bitterly, loyal until the consequences arrive. There's something else. Elena turned to face him. Your board of directors wants to meet. They're concerned about company stability, considering everything. James felt the familiar weight settle on his shoulders. The empire he built, now vulnerable because he'd been stupid enough to trust the wrong people. When's the meeting? Tomorrow, 9 a.m. James nodded slowly. Tomorrow, he'd face his board and fight for his company. Tonight, he'd allow himself to feel the devastation. Elena, he said quietly, thank you for everything. I know the case is closed, but he paused, searching for words. I'd like to offer you a position. Director of Corporate Ethics and Internal Investigation. I'm creating the department specifically. It should have existed from the beginning. Elena's eyes widened. James, you saved my life, my company, everything. Let me return the favor. Help me make sure this never happens again. To anyone. She smiled, that genuine smile he'd only seen a handful of times. I accept, on one condition. Name it. We start a scholarship program for kids like your brother Derek used to be, before greed corrupted him. Kids like Jamie. Kids like you once were. We invest in underdogs. James felt something warm bloom in his chest. The first positive emotion in 48 hours. Done. Outside his study window, dawn was breaking over the city. A new day. A new chapter. The underdog billionaire had survived betrayal. But the real question remained. Could he learn to trust again? 6 months later, the courtroom was packed. James sat in the front row, Elena beside him, watching as the judge delivered the final sentences. Derek, 8 years of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted grand larceny. Victoria, 7 years on similar charges, with possible parole after 5. James, 4 years, reduced for cooperation and genuine remorse. The fake witnesses and Gerald Hutchins received lighter sentences, 18 months to 3 years each. As the bailiff led them away, Victoria turned back one last time. Her eyes found James's. No words exchanged. Just a final look. The death of what they'd been. The acceptance of what they'd become. James felt nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a quiet, settled emptiness where love used to live. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. James ignored them all, Elena running interference as they pushed through to the waiting car. But he had one stop to make first. The community college. Same one he graduated from 23 years ago. James stood at the podium, looking out at 200 students from underprivileged backgrounds. Kids working 2 jobs while taking classes. Single mothers chasing degrees. Immigrants building new dreams. He saw himself in every face. "I want to tell you a story," James began, his voice carrying through the auditorium. "About the time I lost everything." He told them. Not all of it. Some wounds were too fresh, but enough. The betrayal, the fake courtroom, the woman who saved him when he couldn't save himself. Success, James said, gripping the podium, isn't measured by what you build. It's measured by whether you're still standing when people try to tear it down. And more importantly, whether you remember where you came from when you reached the top. He looked to the back of the auditorium where Elena stood, now officially as Director of Corporate Ethics. She nodded encouragingly. "I made a mistake," James continued. "I got so focused on building my empire that I forgot the people I was building it with. I trusted titles, brother, wife, partner, instead of character, and it almost cost me everything." A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "How do you trust anyone again after that?" James smiled sadly. "That's $1 million question, isn't it? Or in my case, the $847 million question." Scattered laughter. "The truth? I'm still figuring it out. But I learned something important. Trust isn't about finding people who'll never hurt you. It's about finding people who remember where they came from, who know what it's like to have nothing. Because those people, the ones who've been in the dirt, they understand what really matters." He paused, emotion thick in his throat. Elena wasn't my maid. She was an investigator. But she took that job because 15 years ago, I gave her brother, a kid from the Bronx with nothing but talent, a scholarship. I don't even remember doing it. It was just Tuesday to me. But to a family, it changed everything. James pulled out a check from his pocket. Not a prop. Real. $50 million. Today, I'm announcing the Underdog Foundation. Scholarships, internships, mentorship programs for students like you. Like I used to be. Because I was you once, sleeping in my car, eating ramen, coding until my eyes bled. And someone gave me a chance. Now it's my turn to give it forward. The auditorium erupted in applause. James saw tears. Hope. The same hunger he'd once felt. After the speech, a young man approached, maybe 19, lanky, nervous. "Mr. Frank, I'm Carlos. I'm studying computer science while working night shifts at a warehouse. I just wanted to say, thank you for not giving up, for still believing in people like us." James shook his hand. "What are you working on?" "Carlos. An app for low-income families to find free resources. Food banks, clinics, legal aid. I grew up not knowing this stuff existed. Thought I could change that." James pulled out his business card. "Send me your pitch. If it's good, let's talk about funding." Carlos's eyes went wide. Seriously. Seriously. "But Carlos." James leaned in. "When you make it big, and you will remember this moment. Remember what it felt like to need help. And help the next person climbing up behind you. That's how we change the world." 3 hours later, James' restructured company headquarters. James walked through the building he'd almost lost. New board members, new safeguards, new corporate ethics department led by Elena, who'd already stopped 2 attempted fraud schemes in 6 months. Emma worked 3 floors down, entry-level position, earning her way up. She called him every day, just like she'd promised. Their relationship was healing. Slowly, carefully, honestly. His office was different now. Simpler. He'd donated most of the expensive art, the status symbols. Kept only the things that mattered. Emma's childhood drawings, a photo of his late mentor Richard Walsh, and a framed copy of his first paycheck from 23 years ago, $8.47, before the millions. A reminder of who he'd been, who he still was underneath the money. James's phone buzzed. Text from Elena. "New scholarship applications are in. 2,000 of them. We're going to change a lot of lives." He smiled. "Type back. We already have." The moral? Here it is. Success doesn't corrupt people. It reveals them. James learned the hardest way possible that money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies it. Derek had always been envious. Victoria had always been materialistic. James had always been weak. James just hadn't wanted to see it. But here's the other side of that coin. Elena's brother Jamie had always been hungry to succeed, to help others. Elena herself had always been principled, loyal to those who showed kindness. James had always been an underdog who remembered his roots. The money didn't create the betrayal. It just exposed what was already there. So when you climb, and you will climb, pay attention to who's climbing with you. Trust the people who remember what it's like to be at the bottom. Trust the ones who help others even when there's nothing to gain. Trust character over title, actions over words, consistency over convenience. And most importantly, never forget where you came from. Because the moment you do, you become the villain in someone else's story. James Frank lost his family but found his purpose. He lost his trust but gained discernment. He lost his illusions but gained his truth. He was still standing, still building, still believing in underdogs. Because once an underdog, always an underdog, even in a billionaire's suit. If this story moved you, if it made you think twice about who you trust and who you become when you succeed, then you need to subscribe to Billionaire Dawn Stories right now. Hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Every week, I bring you real stories of billionaires who fell, who rose, who betrayed and were betrayed. Stories that will change how you see success, money, and the people around you. This is more than entertainment. This is education wrapped in emotion. This is how you learn what schools won't teach you about wealth, power, and human nature. Subscribe to Billionaire Dawn Stories. Turn on notifications, because the next story, it's even more shocking than this one. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Let's talk about it. Remember, success reveals character. Make sure yours is worth revealing. Subscribe now. Your future self will thank you.